You have seen how to safely enter a subject's danger zone, how to obtain proper hand placement, and how to lock the joint. In the event that you encounter a degree of resistance which justifies an increased level of force, you may utilize a takedown to bring the situation under control. The first takedown we will look at is the straight drop takedown. Let's look at this in detail. The wrist is locked by using a forward casting motion instead of the inward twisting motion. The officer's arms are then extended downward until the elbows are locked. Now let's take a look at that procedure again. Next, the officer uses his or her body weight, not physical strength, to take the subject to the ground. Depending upon the situation, you may want to use a side circular cast takedown instead of a straight drop takedown. For instance, if you're in a narrow hallway, the straight drop may be the best. However, if you have multiple attackers, you might use the side circular cast to put distance between you and your attackers. While executing the side circular cast, start by using the forward lock as in the straight drop takedown. The second part of the side circular cast takedown is the downward spiral. This is executed by extending energy through your arms while guiding the subject's hand outward and progressively downward. The power behind this movement should come from your center, not from your arms or upper body strength. Observe the movement of the hips. The O'Domhnaill continuous control system is designed to be effective for all officers, regardless of the officer's physical size or strength. This is possible because the power of the system comes from the center or the lower abdomen area of the body. All movement must involve this element. Once a takedown is executed, it must be followed by an immediate immobilization technique, otherwise known as a pin. If this is not done, the subject will most likely rise back to his feet and the situation will probably escalate. Let's first look at the standing pin. Once again, your hand placement is not changed. Begin by twisting the blade of the subject's hand underneath and inward. This is done with your control hand. Observe how Mr. O'Domhnaill then uses his shin or knee to push the subject's elbow in a circular motion outward. All of these aspects are combined together and executed almost simultaneously to produce the pin. From the pin, one can easily move into position for handcuffing while maintaining complete control and not letting go of the control hand. Let's move on to the hip pin. In this technique, the subject's hand is snaked up around the inside of the officer's leg and pulled up into the outside of the officer's inside hip. The subject's hand and wrist are pinned between the officer's lower abdomen and upper thigh. Begin by releasing the fingers. Pull your control hand up into the hip as you extend your knee forward. Make sure that the knee is extended deeply or significantly past the top of the subject's shoulder. You may release the control hand at this point momentarily to draw your weapon if needed. This pin gives you the freedom to turn 180 degrees in both directions, to cover the entire area while maintaining control of the subject beneath you. Observe how Mr. O'Domhnaill achieves pain compliance by rotating his hips to the outside of the subject. Once again, as with the standing pin, the transition to handcuffing is easily made without jeopardizing control. Control is maintained at this point not only by locking the wrist, but by also applying pressure to the lower back with one knee and applying pressure to the side of the subject's head with the other. Whether the subject is compliant or non-compliant, OCCS handcuffing is highly effective. Verbally advise the subject that he is under arrest, and any movement by him that is not verbally directed by you will be considered an attempt to escape from custody or a threat to your person. At this point, awareness of preemptive resistance is the key. If you encounter resistance which you feel justifies a takedown, proceed with one of the two takedowns we discussed and secure the subject with restraints.
You're under arrest. Turn around, put your hand behind your back.
If you decide to proceed with a takedown after cuffing the far hand but prior to cuffing the close hand, simply let go of the cuffs and concentrate on the takedown. When you proceed with completing the prone cuffing procedure, you will already have one cuff on. Simply secure the second cuff. Let's break down the handcuffing procedure. Notice how the knee is still being used to keep the subject slightly off balance while guarding against a possible kicking attack. Notice how Mr. O'Domhnaill is positioned at the 2.5, avoiding a back kick. Observe the hand placement on the cuffs at this point. The grip does not change. The moving blades, or single blades of the cuffs, point away from the officer. The cuff coming out of the top of the officer's hand is applied to the subject's far hand first. The officer now uses leverage to obtain additional control by slightly twisting the cuff as shown. The subject's close hand is then moved over to meet the far hand, and the second cuff is applied by simply pressing downward with your cuff hand. Once again, remember that this procedure can be abandoned at any time. If you are forced to abandon the cuffing procedure, do not be concerned with the handcuffs. Maintain control of the subject. Handcuffs may look nice, but they are useless if you don't have control of the subject. Let's take a moment and look at the procedure done with the subject standing straight up. Perhaps the subject refused the officer's orders to assume the handcuffing position. Note the important elements: the 2.5 entering, the hand placement, the position of the officer's knee, the officer's awareness of preemptive resistance, and the use of leverage once the first cuff is applied to bring the far hand over to the close hand. Watch the procedure executed on a violent suspect who attempts to strike the officer in the face. Notice the 4 points of control during the prone cuffing procedure: the wrist lock, the elbow lock, the lower back. Observe how Mr. O'Domhnaill directs energy through his knee into the subject's lower back as the subject attempts to escape. And the head. Note also the use of leverage, even in the prone position. Let's take a look at that takedown again.